With a mix of curiosity and anticipation, he pulled the fishing net up, only to find a sight that took his breath away: a captivating mermaid. Once upon a time, in a small village by the sea in Acuna, there lived a humble fisherman named Obina. Obina was known throughout the village for his skill in catching fishes, selling some of his catch in the village market, and also providing for his family. In the village of Acuna, where Obina lived, there was a river called Didu. This river was known for its mysterious activity and was home to the most dreaded mermaid in all the land. Despite the abundance of fish in the river, both the king and the spiritual elders in the village had warned against venturing near or fishing from its waters. The mermaid of Didu was said to be fierce and unforgiving, and any who dared to disobey her warnings risked facing her wrath. But fate had a curious twist in store for Obina, one that would test his character and reshape the destiny of his village. It began on a day like any other, with the sun casting its warm embrace upon the land and the sea, whispering secrets to those who dared to listen. Obina's wife, Nana, woke that morning with a heavy heart, her sleep disturbed by a troubling dream. In her vision, she saw Obina, shrouded in darkness, struggling against powerful currents that threatened to pull him beneath the waves. Terrified for her husband's safety, Nana begged him not to venture to the river that day, but Obina dismissed her fears with a reassuring smile, insisting that it was just a dream. As Obina set out for his fateful fishing trip, Nana remained behind, her heart heavy with worry. She knew the dangers that lurked in the waters of Didu and the folly of tempting fate. Turning to the ancestral spirits of their village, Nana prayed for their guidance and protection over her husband, pleading for his safe return. She lit incense sticks and placed them before the family shrine, their fragrant smoke rising like a plea to the heavens. As Obina sailed further than usual into the heart of the river, he felt a peculiar tug on his net, a pull that seemed to beckon him deeper into the unknown waters. With a mix of curiosity and anticipation, he pulled the net up, only to find a sight that took his breath away: a captivating mermaid, her luminous form entwined within the meshes of his net. At first, Obina was mesmerized by the mermaid's otherworldly beauty, her long flowing hair glistening like strands of silver in the sunlight. But his awe quickly turned to fear as the mermaid pleaded with him to set her free, promising him untold riches and blessings in return. Despite Nana's pleas and dreams echoing in his mind, Obina's greed got the better of him. Ignoring the mermaid's warnings, he bound her tightly and brought her ashore, oblivious to the consequences his actions would bring upon his village and his own life. After Obina caught the mermaid and refused to let her go, he knew he had made a grave mistake. However, he was too afraid to face the consequences of his actions, so he decided to wait until midnight before he could sneak back home without being noticed by any villagers. Under the cover of night, Obina carefully slipped away from the riverbank, his footsteps muffled by the soft earth beneath his feet. With each passing moment, his anxiety grew, his mind plagued by thoughts of what awaited him at home and the weight of his guilt threatening to crush him. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Obina reached the safety of his humble abode. With a heavy sigh of relief, he slipped inside, careful not to disturb Nana as she slept peacefully in their bed. The next morning, seemingly unaffected by any regret for capturing the mermaid, Obina opted to conceal her in a secluded hut. He was determined to shield his wife and the villagers from the truth of his actions, so he embarked on his journey to the farm. However, upon arrival, his heart sank as he beheld the desolation that greeted him. His once flourishing crops had vanished without a trace, leaving only barren earth in their stead. Heartbroken and bewildered, Obina returned home. His shoulders slumped with sadness. Unable to bear the weight of his troubles alone, he confided in his wife, Nana, sharing his fears of persecution from his village enemies. He lamented how some jealous fishermen might have plotted against him, envious of his past success. Nana, ever the pillar of strength and comfort, offered words of solace to her husband, assuring him that everything would eventually be fine. With a heavy heart, she resolved to take action to appease the gods of the land, offering sacrifices in hopes of restoring peace and prosperity to their troubled lives. As days turned into weeks, the repercussions of Obina's fateful decision rippled throughout the village of Acuna. Initially, His capture of the mermaid seemed to have little consequence beyond the confines of his own conscience. However, as time wore on, the true extent of the mermaid's wrath became painfully evident. As time went on, the river that once flowed freely through the village began to dry up. The water levels gradually decreased until there was barely a trickle left, and the once teeming fish population began to dwindle. Eventually, the river became nothing more than a barren expanse of cracked earth, devoid of life. With the river's demise came the loss of the villagers' primary source of water and food. No longer could they rely on its bounty to sustain themselves, and desperation set in as their crops withered and their stomachs growled with hunger. The once thriving community now found itself on the brink of collapse, its inhabitants gripped by fear and uncertainty. Unable to endure their suffering any longer, the villagers banded together and marched in numbers to the king's palace, their voices raised in a chorus of discontent and demand for action. They implored the king to address their plight and provide a solution to the crisis that threatened their very survival. Some even went so far as to threaten to depose the king if he failed to act swiftly and decisively. Upon hearing the villagers' grievances, the king realized the gravity of the situation and understood that immediate action was required to avert disaster. Without hesitation, he summoned the village priest, known for his wisdom and connection to the spiritual realm, to the palace. When the village priest arrived at the palace, he wasted no time in performing the sacred rituals to seek guidance from the gods. Through the rituals, the gods revealed to him that one of the villagers was responsible for their misfortune. However, due to the mermaid's manipulation of his visions, he could not identify the culprit by name. The mermaid, driven by her desire for vengeance, had clouded his senses to ensure that the villagers suffered for the transgression of one among them. Upon hearing the priest's revelation, the villagers were thrown into a state of turmoil and suspicion. Accusations flew as they pointed fingers at each other, each one fearing that their neighbor might be the one responsible for bringing about their plight. In the absence of concrete evidence, however, uncertainty reigned, and no one could say for certain who had committed the abomination that had brought about their suffering. When Obina and his wife returned home from the palace, Nana's heart was heavy with dread as she broached the subject with her husband. With a shameless disregard for the truth, Obina confessed to being the one responsible for their misfortune. Shocked and disappointed by her husband's admission, Nana could hardly believe what she was hearing. She reminded him of her warnings about her dreams and pleaded with him to heed her words. But her pleas fell on deaf ears. As the weight of Obina's betrayal settled upon her, Nana struggled to come to terms with the reality of their situation. She couldn't understand how her husband could have acted so recklessly, knowing full well the consequences of his actions. As Obina left Nana still reeling from the shock of his confession, he made his way straight to the secret room where he had kept the mermaid hidden. To his dismay, he found the room empty, with no trace of the mermaid to be found. Panic gripped his heart as he realized the gravity of the situation. Despite his fear, however, Obina remained steadfast in his resolve to keep his secret hidden from the king, the villagers, and even the village priest. Days turned into nights, and still, Obina kept his silence, refusing to confess to his wrongdoing. But as time wore on, a new tragedy befell the couple, casting a shadow over their already troubled lives. Nana, who had been carrying their long-awaited child, lost her pregnancy, leaving them both devastated and heartbroken. The loss of their unborn child weighed heavily on Obina's conscience, and he could no longer ignore the guilt that gnawed at his soul. Unable to bear the weight of his deception any longer, Obina knew that he could not continue to hide the truth from those he loved. With a heavy heart, he made his way to the king's palace, his steps heavy with shame and regret. Upon his arrival, the king was shocked to hear Obina's confession, his eyes widening in disbelief at the gravity of the revelation. The king wasted no time in summoning the village priest, who arrived at the palace with a grave expression on his face. With the gods as their witness, the chief priest beseeched the divine realm for guidance, seeking a path to redemption for Obina and the village of Akuna. After consulting with the gods, the chief priest delivered his verdict. Obina must journey to the evil forest and retrieve an egg to appease the river goddess and seek her forgiveness. Though filled with fear and trepidation, Obina knew that he had no choice but to obey the will of the gods. Before Obina set out into the dangerous evil forest, he sought help from the village priest. The priest performed special rituals to protect Obina from any dangers he might face. These rituals asked the gods to keep Obina safe on his journey. After the rituals, Obina felt stronger and more determined. With the blessings of the priest and the prayers of the villagers, he started his journey. He knew he had to save his village from its troubles. In the forest, Obina faced many challenges. The path was difficult, with vines and shadows making it hard to see. But Obina kept going, not letting anything stop him. As he went deeper into the forest, Obina saw strange things and heard strange sounds. There were scary creatures around, but Obina stayed brave and kept moving forward. Finally, Obina found what he was looking for: a shiny golden egg hidden under a big tree. He carefully took the egg, knowing it was important for his village's future. But getting back to Akuna was not easy. The forest tried to stop Obina, but with the priest's blessings, he made it through. After Obina returned to the village of Akuna with the precious egg, a miraculous transformation took place. The river, once dried up and barren, now flowed freely once again, teeming with fish and life. The villagers rejoiced as they could once again fetch water and catch fish to sustain themselves. With the return of the river's bounty, life in the village returned to normal, and a sense of hope and renewal filled the air. In the months that followed, happiness descended upon Obina and Nana as they received news that Nana was pregnant. Their joy knew no bounds as they eagerly awaited the arrival of their long-awaited child, their hearts filled with gratitude for the blessings that had been bestowed upon them. The moral of this tale is that greed and disobedience can lead to disastrous consequences, not only for oneself, but for an entire community. However, redemption is possible through acts of courage, sacrifice, and repentance. Obina's willingness to confront his mistakes and seek forgiveness ultimately brought about the restoration of his village and the renewal of hope for its inhabitants. Now, dear viewers, I encourage you to reflect on the lessons learned from this story. What do you think about the consequences of greed and disobedience? How important is it to seek forgiveness and make amends for our mistakes? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and turn on your post notifications for more inspiring stories and lessons. Your support helps us continue to spread positive messages to viewers like you.